Hey, Ebe.
What?
Come here, I have something to show you.
Do I have to?
Yeah, it's very important.
What?
Wait, no, I'm not ready. Don't look at me yet.
Then why'd you even call me here?
Just turn around.
Fine.
Okay, you can turn now.
Why'd you even tell me to turn if you were that quick? Wait, what are you wearing? Are you gonna answer me, or...?
I'm glad you can join me, Ebe. You've reviewed a bunch of games, but you've never given them a score.
And? Wait, don't tell me you're gonna make me
Make a tier list of all the games you've reviewed thus far.
But I talked about so many games, this will take too long.
Well, that's why you must stop talking and take a seat over there.
Can I at least sit in my normal seat?
I said take a seat over there!
Okay.
Great, let's get this thing started. Your first game will be Drawn to Life the Next Chapter. How nostalgic. How long ago was it since I talked about this game? 6 years ago.
Time is really something else.
Anyways, I was pretty harsh in my initial review of this game. I don't know why, but early on, I was like a really negative reviewer. I would mostly try to find negatives than positives, which I quickly changed after a couple of games. The game isn't as good as the first Drawn to Life, but that doesn't make it bad. It does lack some stuff, but it adds stuff as well. If you just want a good time, this game isn't too bad. It's been a minute since I've played it, but I will put it in B tier. I don't know what I was on about in the past. But if you like the first Drawn to Life, this wouldn't be too bad to play.
Quite generous, eh?
It is my tier list, and also, I did kind of feel bad for the game when I rewatched my initial opinion. Alright, the next game is Bowser's Inside Story. Oh, this one's easy. I'm not going to waste time. Put this in S tier. There are two types of people out there, the Superstar Saga enthusiasts and the Bowser's Inside Story enjoyers. You can guess which one I am. If you have a DS, this is a must play.
Keeping it short, huh?
Yep.
Hey, what does this button do?
Yeah, what the? Hey, what is this?
Huh?
Oh, I forgot I installed that.
Installed what? Move it away from my face!
It's a better way to see what game is next.
Oh, well, that's pretty useful. Wait, how much was it to install?
Let's just say your wallet is empty now.
Huh?
Hello, are you gonna talk about the next game or not? Remind me to teach you a lesson later. New Super Mario Bros. 2 was definitely a game alright, but it's so easily forgettable, and compared to the other New Super Mario Bros. Titles, this one is definitely the least talked about. I'm putting it in B tier because although it is pretty underwhelming to the series, that doesn't mean you can't have a good time with the game. In other words, it's pretty mid. Super Smash Bros. For 3DS is a Smash game on a handheld. It's pretty much the lesser version of Smash for Wii U. However, I would also digress that this game does some things better than its Wii U counterpart. I like the outlines you can give characters. Makes you wonder why they never added this feature back. The modes and stages were also better than the Wii U one, I would say, with ones not even getting into Ultimate. That really is kind of criminal, you know. Anyways, this is an A tier game. Probably the worst Smash game in definition, but nowhere near the worst game. The Wii U had some pretty good games, but eventually 90% of them would be ported to the Switch. Technically, this game was never ported. Instead, they made a new game all around, but that means this is a game exclusive to the Wii U. Now, is it worth buying a Wii U over? No, but I would actually say it plays better than Ultimate. There are things that I really prefer from this game that Ultimate just removes. Some stages give characters a unique look to them. The light overall looks better in this game, and although the knockback is slower in this game, the gameplay actually feels somewhat more crazy. In a weird way, this game just feels a lot less restricting to play, but I'm putting it in A tier, and there's a reason for my next decision. Smash Ultimate is a game I've been excited for, and when the game was active, they were some great days. So many characters, so many stages, overall good graphics, the hype is trailers, and the list can go on. But one thing is for sure, I don't think this is the best Smash game. It is the most refined, which is enough for me to give it an S tier, but the best Smash game is one I have yet to talk about. Just know that of the 3 I've talked about so far, this one is the best in my opinion. It only makes the bar for Smash games higher, which in turn makes me eager to see what happens next with the series.
Those were some interesting takes you had there. I don't think these are pretty outlandish, compared to later at least.
Super Mario 3D Land is a fantastic 3DS game. I loved every moment of playing it as a kid, and even nowadays I can enjoy playing this game. It shows off the 3D function really well, and it's just a good time overall. I'm putting this in high A tier only because in terms of every game I'm going over, I don't think this deserves an S, but it's really close to it. This is a very forgettable game. I bet not many of you even know Pac Man and Galaga Dimensions even existed. Well, it does. If this were a Namco museum, it's pretty not amazing. But then there are two games that I'm pretty sure you can only ever play in this game. They feel more like 3DS tech demos if anything. It's not really worth buying the game just for the exclusive games included, so I'm putting this in D tier. There are much better ways to play both Pac Man and Galaga, and it doesn't feel worth playing the exclusive games. Now here's a game in the total opposite spectrum. This is quite easily my favorite Sonic game of all time. It feels like one of those crazy good fan-made games, but is actually official. It's criminal how there was never a sequel to this game because I can tell you, there are so many 2D Sonic games that a theoretical Sonic Mania 2 can take levels from. The DLC was nothing special. It gives you more characters, and I think that's the only reason you would ever buy this DLC. But overall, this game gets an S tier. The first Mario Maker is a classic. It's pretty sad that now it's been terminated, making the game practically unplayable. But this game does have things that Mario Maker 2 doesn't. The special character levels. There are so many of these that they would do well for an offline experience. For the time I had with this game, I would put this in S tier. A game where you can make your own Mario levels. And the way this game was treated with all the collabs and all the new updates makes it feel like a special game. You just had to be there to know. On the other hand, Mario Maker 2 is getting an A tier. Sure, this game adds stuff that the first game lacked, but I feel like it was a pretty short-lived game. The only cool things added was the Link sword that makes you play as Link, and the Super Mario Land transformation. All the amiibo support is gone, the collabs don't exist, and the fact that there were like 3 major updates before they stopped giving attention to the game makes this game feel so much more boring. I have a theory that the game actually underperformed, making them decide to not really pay attention to the game, which really sucks. But if there was ever a Mario Maker 3, let's hope there's some sort of 3D, or more 3D Mario games represented like Mario Galaxy or even Mario 64. Odyssey and Sunshine would be pretty cool to see too. Splatoon is a series I hold dear to me. Not many people like it in the West, mostly because the series was aimed towards kids more than anything. I'd say that's not completely the case nowadays, but in the past, that was totally the case. This came out during the Wii U days after all. This is a series I urge people to try out if they ever had the chance because of how unique it is as a shooter. It doesn't have the crazy gore of a shooter, yet it captures a very fun and unique twist to it where anyone can enjoy it. The first game was great for its time, but the sequels would only show how not great of a game this was. Regardless, I'm giving this game an A tier. Next comes Splatoon 2, and this is just better than the first game. You can tell that Nintendo gained confidence with this series in such a short amount of time. After all, the reception from the first game is really why they made a second game in such a quick amount of time. This game was one of the first Switch games coming out months after the Switch's release. I mean, 2 years to make a sequel is pretty quick, you know. They even went and made a spectacular DLC to this game. No matter how you look at it, this was a great game. However, I'd still put it in A tier, above Splatoon. And now we're at peak. Breath of the Wild is such a one-of-a-kind game that all the games that came out trying to be like it would never reach the magic this game brought. The sheer amount of things you can do in this game is amazing, and to this day people would prefer it over Tears of the Kingdom. The DLC wasn't bad at all, with both of them being pretty cool. If you have never played this game, you're missing out on a modern gem. Will we ever get a game that was as influential as this one is beyond me, but that's a thought for another day. This game gets a high S tier. Moving on to Mario Odyssey, another spectacular game that came out in 2017. This was one of the greatest Mario 3D games to ever come out. It's around the same status of Mario 64 with the way people love it. I'm more of a 64 guy, but the things this game has introduced was beyond anything a Mario game has even dared to try. You had one of the most fluid movements of gaming in general, one of the coolest gimmicks from a Mario game, the ability to choose your own costumes, an amazing world, and so on and so forth. The game is an S tier by all means, and this is another game you must play. The Switch 2 is confirmed to be backwards compatible, so you really have all the chances to play this now or in the future. Another 3D Mario game. This time, it's for the Wii U, and it's the one and only Super Mario 3D World. I say one and only even though it's been re-released for the Switch. The game is an even better 3D land with the ability to play as more characters in multiplayer. I'm telling you, this game with multiplayer is a completely different game, and it's honestly a shame that Mario multiplayer doesn't feel like this anymore. I would have loved to see a competitive multiplayer in Mario Wonder. I'm giving this game a low S tier. Anyone can enjoy this game, especially if you have people to play it with. Next is Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. This is one of the most unique racers that I've ever played, and it's only a shame that Sonic racers aren't like this anymore. High speed is what the old Sonic racers were about, but now they're about cars, which makes no sense given that Sonic is the fastest being in his world. Anyways, remembering this game, I thought it was the coolest thing ever, but when I played it, I realized how repetitive the game can get. Don't get me wrong, it's a fun game, but it lacks content which makes it pretty underwhelming. I really want to give it an A tier, but I don't think it deserves it, so I'm giving it a high B tier. That soundtrack will forever be one of the best of all time. I forgot I even talked about Kirby Star Allies. It was the first Kirby game I ever reviewed, and all I'm going to say is, although this game has so much content, that doesn't necessarily make it worth getting. It's alright of a game, but at the same time, it's pretty forgettable. B tier. The first Mario Kart game. Super Mario Kart is the worst Mario Kart there is, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It started the legendary series, and there is some fun to be had with this game, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend the game. If you have Switch Online, you might as well try it out for free, but I wouldn't say this is a game worth spending money on. C tier. When it comes to platformers, the Rayman series was pretty good. Origins is still to this day one of my favorites ever. It's a hidden gem that not many people pay attention to. The 2D aesthetic, the challenge feeling just right, and it's not a Nintendo exclusive title. I loved every second playing this game, and Ubisoft sold by not making any more Rayman platformers. I'm giving this an S tier if I have to be honest.
If I'm lying, I would have given it an A tier. You really do say to be honest a lot, don't you?
Next comes the Super Mario Bros. Trilogy. For as old as these games are, they feel so timeless. Graphics aside, you could enjoy these games no matter the era. They're all pretty solid games that feel more like an arcade game if anything, but I'd put them in A tier since apart from the game, you really don't get much out of it. The NES music isn't the most amazing thing to listen to at any time. The graphics are dated, and the games are never going to be different. I guess it does get points for how replayable it is. Rayman Legends is another cool game, but I prefer Origins. It's more or less the same game with new mechanics here and there and a unique art style, but it does lose the charm a little from the previous game. I do like the music segments of the game though. A tier. Another legendary series dawns upon us with Katamari Damacy. People get turned away from this series because of its weirdness, but those same people would play one of those mobile games that practically has the same concept of this game. There is no more of a satisfying game series than this one, but in terms of the very first one, although it's good, it lacks what the later games introduce. You'll no doubt have a good time with this game and its awesome soundtrack, but the sequels are just so much better. Surprisingly, I'm giving this an A tier. Super Mario World is my favorite 2D Mario platformer. It's such a classic that honestly still feels pretty new today. Its graphics don't make it look aged. The gameplay is fun, and it has power-ups and mechanics that have never come back to the series ever. This is what I think a 2D Mario game should be like, S tier. For its sequel, however, this is nothing like a Mario game. Yoshi's Island may be called Super Mario World 2, but don't let that title fool you. This is a platformer that I feel would only work with this series. Even though this is the first game in its series, it is absolutely fantastic. And to be honest, I don't really know if the other Yoshi games are better than this one. Not only does it look good, it has a great experience that you would only ever find in this game. Another S tier. A game I hold very dear to me. Super Mario 64 is a game that influenced games. If you ask me what's the best example of a 3D platformer, this is the game I would tell you. It just does things right. Although the controls aren't the best, the graphics are dated, and the camera is terrible, this is still a game that will give you many good memories. An easy S tier. Now, I haven't played Persona 4 Golden, but I have played the original. Golden won't influence my opinion much on this game, but I think Persona 4 is the greatest Persona game out there. I haven't played Persona 3 yet to make that judgment, and I most certainly haven't touched 1 or 2. I've grown to actually not like the Persona series as much as I did when I did the reviews, but every time I think about this game, I have some fond memories of it. A great cast, an amazing soundtrack, a unique setting for a game to take place in, an alright story, and an awesome time on the PlayStation 2. I did play it on original hardware, and it really felt like I was taken back in time by doing that. I had a great experience with this game, and even though I said I'm not a huge Persona fan, if this game gets remade, I will be playing it. An S tier. I pretty much have the same opinion for the next two games. Super Mario All-Stars for the SNES is a pretty good collection. It remakes the Super Mario trilogy and even has both Super Mario Bros. 2s in it, so you can play all the games in that series on a better hardware. I might as well put it above the originals, right? So an A tier. Next is Super Mario 3D All-Stars, a game you can't buy a new copy of anymore. Well, you can, just probably not in official stores. This just remasters 3 of the classic 3D Mario games, which is cool and all, but why exclude Super Mario Galaxy 2? That's a decision I will never understand. Well, it's most likely because they want each game to be valued at $20, which, well, people have their opinion on Mario 64 being valued the same as Mario Galaxy in this day and age. Whatever the case, another solid collection, and I would like to see more Nintendo games get this treatment. An A tier. The next Mario Kart I talked about was Mario Kart 64. This game is a massive improvement from the previous game, and I can definitely see why people have a soft spot for it. I wouldn't go out of my way to play it again, but I also wouldn't pass on the opportunity. It has this classic feel to it that some old games tend to have, where no matter the era, it will always feel like a game you can enjoy. This is an A tier though. I can see all the angry Mario Kart 64 fans right now. It's not like I put this game that low though. Persona 5 is a game that I felt so lost in terms of how I really feel with the game, so I'll tell you exactly how I feel. And this is completely different to my review, or maybe not, I don't know, it's been a while since I actually looked at what I said. I'm not a big fan of this game. It has some great things in it, like an awesome aesthetic, and well, that's really all the good I can say about this game. I don't like the cast of this game. I always thought Joker looked sauceless if anything. I'm not a fan of Tokyo, even though it is most likely a great place to be, for traveling at least. I still haven't gone there even though it's the closest it can ever be to me. And I think the story is pretty mid. There is no real drama you would feel in this game. Sure, there are messed up things in it that would make you want to side with the protagonist, but that's about it. Persona 5 Royal doesn't really change my opinion on the game much either. It's awesome that there's a lot to do in the game, but I always want to forget my experience with the game. Am I being too harsh on the game? Probably. But nonetheless, I'd put it in A tier. I know people would enjoy this game, but as a Persona game, I'm not a huge fan. We now get into the first Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi game I talk about. Well, technically I've only talked about 2 of them, but this is the first game regardless. This game was my childhood. I spent so much time on it that I would never trade it away for anything. Sure, this isn't the best in the series, but I had some fond memories playing with my brother and talking about it with my friends at school. You can see how much joy this game series brings to many people, and this is the game that started it all. But now having played this game's sequels, it always feels hard to go back to. It is still a fun game, but there is no reason to go back to it if you have the newer games in the series. So I'm putting this in B tier. I don't think Sonic Forces is a game that anyone likes. Like, what does this game even have going for it? Sonic Boom may be infamous, but this game is nothing. No one tries to remember it, and if you do, it's probably for its music. It was such a boring game when I played it and not really noteworthy. I'm putting this in D tier. The second Katamari game I talk about, and this one holds a special place in my heart more than the first game. We Love Katamari is arguably the best game in the series. If you want a good time with this series, this is the game you play. The game feels a lot more fluid than the first, has a lot more going for it than the first, and is just as quirky as the first. Now that there's a remake of this game on all modern consoles, you can play this whenever. I got it on my Switch and loved every second of it, but can't help but wonder why they either don't make a new game in the series, or at least have the mechanics from Katamari Forever. I'm getting sidetracked here. I'm giving this game an S tier.
What the? You only talked about 3 games in Season 3? I guess I did. That's a lot smaller than I expected.
Gravity Rush was the first game on PS4 I talked about. It was a pretty good experience, but the controller I used to play the game wasn't in its best condition, so it would be a bit hard to control the game. But whenever I would use the good controller, I wouldn't have a problem. The game wasn't bad, but then I played Gravity Rush 2. I don't think this game is bad, but there's never really a reason to play the game unless you want to learn about the lore of the series. I'm giving this game B tier. On the other hand, Gravity Rush 2 is well worth playing. I had this on the PlayStation Now service that's now PlayStation Plus Premium. For the short time I played it, I had a lot of fun and wish I could 100% the game. If the chance does arise, I will do just that. This game has so much going for it that its replayability is more than I ever expected. If you want a modern PlayStation classic, this game is definitely a good choice. I will give it a high A tier. It's really good, but there were times I would get annoyed with the story. Plus, at times it could feel a bit grindy, so it's not a perfect game. Kirby's Adventure is a great NES game. People sleep on the Kirby series, but I feel like that's thanks to modern Kirby games. The old games were awesome and I would urge anyone who could play it to do so. Kirby's Adventure is what I would call the true first Kirby game. Sure, Dreamland existed, but Kirby's Adventure was the first game to include the copy abilities. Even though it was limited to the NES, there were parts to the game that blew me away. I would argue this is a better game than Mario Bros 1 and 2, but not quite 3, so put it in A tier, between the 3 of them. Mario Kart Super Circuit is the third Mario Kart I've gone over and the last one thus far. I'll make some more in the future, but these are some surprisingly hard games to get or record. For a Mario Kart on the Game Boy, it's not bad, but if I had to choose any Mario Kart game to play, this is not even close. It's better than Super Mario Kart, but that's as far as a compliment I can give it. I did not enjoy my time playing this game, which is a shame given that this game has some of the coolest maps and pretty good music, Game Boy compression aside. Put this game in B tier. Sonic Adventure the First is a game I actually prefer over its sequel. I always found this game to have a lot more than the second game, like the hub world, the connecting stories, and the music. Even the levels are built as if it's just one big part. I did prefer this game's music over the sequel and will have fond memories with this one. It did make me feel motion sick, but in the end, I enjoyed the game. But here's the thing, any story other than Sonic's was just not amazing. So for that, I'll give it an A tier. Mega Man is a game series that people forget exists. That's mainly because the games coming out for it are either non-existent or just re-releases of older games. Regardless, Mega Man X is a game I did talk about, and it was pretty good. I'm not going to lie, this game is hard. But that's something that doesn't really exist with platformers other than indie ones. There's actually really nothing bad I could think about for this game. The game plays just fine. Every level is pretty unique. The bosses are tough, and so on and so forth. I guess there is one thing that isn't ideal, and that's the fact that the game is pretty short if you're good enough. I'll give this game an A tier. I can't quite feel right putting this in S tier, but it wasn't bad whatsoever. The third and final Splatoon game in this list. I haven't gone over the side order DLC yet, so that won't be included for the ranking, but even with it, I would still put this game where I will. Splatoon 3 is a game leagues better than the other two. It has a good base story mode, the multiplayer is the best it's ever been, the models look really good, overall gameplay is good, more movement options, and so much more. I've already said that you should play this series if you haven't, but Splatoon 3 is definitely worth it. Put it in S tier. I cannot give it any lower than that. This feels like the true Splatoon sequel. Ultimate Tenkaichi is probably the most disappointing Dragon Ball game there is. It's either this one or Battle of Z, but with a title like this, you would surely think it's either a sequel to the Budokai Tenkaichi series or just an ultimate experience. Sadly, it's nothing but a rock paper scissors simulator. Even when I made my friend play this game, they didn't even enjoy it. The only good thing to come out of this game though is its amazing graphics, the stage destruction, and the music. I'll give the game a C tier because although it's a pretty mediocre game at best, I wouldn't say this is the worst Dragon Ball game that I've played. The third and final 3D open world Mario game I went over so far was Super Mario Sunshine, and as a kid, I've always been fascinated with this game, but when I played it, I thought it was just an okay game. FLUDD makes the experience a bit weird to control, but that isn't why I say it's just okay. With the exception of this game, all 3D Mario games give you the ability to long jump, and without it, it feels way too weird. The movement is just off to me and does somewhat hinder the experience. I get that the dive is what replaced the long jump in this game, but it feels a lot more limiting than a long jump. Apart from that, I would actually constantly get headaches playing through this game for some reason. Although I somewhat enjoyed playing this game, I can't put it any further than a B tier. This really hurts me, you know, but I can't run away from how I feel. Tetris 99 is kind of forgotten nowadays, and well, it's kind of because of the skill gap that exists in that game. That, and the fact that it's only on the Switch. But even if it were in more consoles, sure, the number of players may rise, but I don't think anyone cares too much towards the game right now. And I guess there's no true reason behind it other than the fact that battle royales in general are kind of not as hype as before. Whatever the case, this game isn't bad. It was pretty fun whenever I played it, and who knows if this game will still be active when the Switch 2 is out. I'll give it an A tier. It's always a good time, but it's kind of hard to play now since there aren't many people playing and the rooms would mostly have bots to fill up the spots. Pac Man 99 was too good for us. I prefer this game much more than Tetris because sure, there can be a skill gap with this game, but it also felt like everyone had a chance. The game is Pac Man, so it already earned my affinity. I'm putting it above Tetris in A tier. Super Mario Bros. 35 on the other hand was taken way too early from us. This is the best out of all the 99 games even though there were only 35 people in a lobby. This game is what I wish Nintendo made more of but for their other series. I'm putting it above the previous two, but still an A tier. Now I did talk about F-Zero 99 in a short, and seeing how I don't think I will ever give this game its own video, I might as well include it here. The game is pretty great and is exactly what I wish Nintendo would make more of. I enjoyed my time playing this game and it's still getting updates to this day. New courses that were never in F-Zero are being made. If only these games wouldn't become empty after a week of its existence. I'm putting it below Mario 35 though in A tier. Now comes my favorite Kirby game. Kirby Superstar is what many people think of when they think of Kirby. It's the greatest Kirby game out there in my opinion. There's just so much to do in it which makes its content feel pretty full. I want to keep this short, so I'm just giving it an S tier. Play this one. Whenever I ask myself what my favorite Katamari game is, it would be between We Love Katamari or Katamari Forever. We Love Katamari has a bunch of new ideas brought into the series, making it stand out from its prequel. But Katamari Forever is a game I feel can only truly be appreciated by Katamari fans. This game brings level from every Katamari game excluding Me and My Katamari, and Touch My Katamari since that game didn't exist before this one. Remixes songs from all Katamari games, this time time including me in my Katamari, and brings the cousins from every game. That's not to say newcomers won't like this game, because I think it's the opposite. The graphics are the best in the Katamari series in my opinion, since it mixes the classic look and a newer look. Playing this game only made me wish Katamari games would continue to look like this. Please Bandai, make a new one. Anyways, this game gets an S tier, right next to We Love Katamari. You can switch either one because I don't know which is better. As I said earlier, I prefer Sonic Adventure 1 over Sonic Adventure 2, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I had much more fun playing this game. This feels a lot more solidified as a game, but it seems like the Sonic team wanted to add more to the game and make it more like Sonic Adventure 1 but couldn't for one reason or another. This game was also just ported better to Steam, so I guess it has that going for it. I'll put this game right next to Adventure 1 in A tier. I know I said what I said earlier, but this game is just the better game no matter how you look at it. Sonic Adventure 3 is pretty mediocre at best. Oh, wait, sorry. I meant to say Sonic 06. This game has an interesting history where it leads me and many others to believe that if this game just had a bit of extra time, it could have potentially been one of the greatest Sonic games to date. However, we're left with a mess of a game. I joke around with my friend a lot, telling them that this game is absolute peak, and it is, so that's why I'm putting it at the very top of S tier. But in all seriousness, it has a great soundtrack, but the game doesn't really play amazingly. I got used to its silly antics, but that doesn't excuse the fact that it was pretty messy of a game. So in all honesty, I'm giving the game a C tier. It may be far from the best game, but I like it way more than Sonic Forces, no questions asked. Now the Donkey Kong Country series is pretty mixed in my opinion, and when I say that, I mean the first two games are peak, while the third game is just okay. I really enjoyed all of them, but the first two games are pretty much the same game, with the second game improving on the first. The third game is okay, but I feel like you actually have to do a lot to get the true ending of the game. Donkey Kong Country 2 also had some sort of collectibles, but it didn't unlock the true final boss or anything like that. So the way I would put it is, Donkey Kong Country 1 goes in A tier, Donkey Kong Country 2 goes in S tier, and Donkey Kong Country 3 goes in B tier. The final game I have talked about so far is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I'm very mixed about the game. In some cases, this game does a lot good, but in other cases, I would much prefer to play the older games. The gameplay is okay, and the game does have a lot of potential seeing that the developers really want this game to be great. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that this game is very lacking in many things the previous Budokai Tenkaichi games have. For starters, I don't always want to play online, especially since you will more or less see the same 5 characters on there, but other than the story mode, custom battles, and offline battles, there are really no modes to play. Where are the mission modes, the survival modes, a unique gimmick mode? All other modes get stale pretty quickly, and given that the computers aren't very hard, the game just feels very lacking. I like the gameplay for the most part at least, and the music is pretty cool, but since there's a lack of content surprisingly, I'll give this game a B tier. It really pains me to do this, but a game that makes me want to play the previous games way more than the current one isn't worthy of anything higher.
Hey! Huh? What? Did you sleep through the rest of the list? I slept? Never mind. I'm done with the list. What? Already? Wow, that's a pretty harsh list. Hey, what do you expect from a tier list? I gave my honest opinions. I guess that's fair. So what now? Do I get a prize or something? What? Why would I do that? So you mean to tell me you called me to make a tier list of every game I've ever reviewed, make me waste my time doing this, and you slept through it just for me to not get anything out of it at the end? Yep. Wait, uh-oh.